All right, so now we will get on this thing, man. Yeah, we're continuing with the with a tribute to Michael Joseph Jackson. He was an American singer, songwriter, and philanthropist, known as the King of Pop. He is regarded one of the most significant cultural figures of the 20th century. During his four-decade career, his contributions to music, dance, and fashion, along with his publicized personal life, made him a global figure in popular culture. Jackson influenced artists across many music genres through stage and video performances. He popularized complicated street dance moves such as the moonwalk, which he named as well as the robot. The eighth child of the Jackson family, Jackson made his public debut in 1964 with his older brothers, Jackie Jackson. That's the name. His real name was Sigmund Esco Jackson. Tito Jackson, whose real name was Toriano Adaro Jackson. Jermaine Jackson, yeah, and Marlon David Jackson. As a member of the Jackson Five, the legendary American pop band that was composed of members of the Jackson family. It was founded in the 1960s in Gary, Indiana. It was later known as the Jacksons. Jackson began his solo career in 1971 while at Motown Records. He became a solo star with his 1979 album Off the Wall. His music videos, including those for Beat It, Billie Jean, and Thriller, from his 1982 album Thriller, are credited with the breaking racial barriers, with transforming the medium into an art form and promotional tool. He helped propel the success of MTV and continued to innovate with videos for the albums Bad, Dangerous, History Past, Present, and Future Book 1, and Invincible. Thriller became the best selling album of all time, while Bad was the first album to produce five US Billboard Hot 100 number one singles. From the late 1980s, Jackson became a figure of controversy and speculation due to his changing appearance, relationships, behavior, and lifestyle. In 1993, he was accused of sexually abusing the child of a family friend. The lawsuit was settled out of civil court. Jackson was not indicted due to the lack of evidence. In 2005, he was tried and acquitted of further child sexual abuse allegations and several other charges. The FBI found no evidence of criminal conduct by Jackson in either case. In 2009, while he was preparing for a series of comeback concerts, This Is It, Jackson died from an overdose of propofol administered by his personal physician, Conrad Murray. Conrad Robert Murray, who was a Canadian American former cardiologist, who was already in the house of Michael Jackson, providing medical treatment to help him sleep on the day that Jackson died in 2009. And in 2009, Murray was convicted of involuntary manslaughter in Jackson's death. Yep, that's what I'm reading what it says here. Conrad Murray, who was convicted in 2011 of involuntary manslaughter for his involvement in Jackson's death. His death was triggered. Let me explain this. His death triggered reactions around the world, creating unprecedented surges of the internet traffic and a spike in sales of his music. A televised memorial service for Jackson, held at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California, was viewed by more than an estimated 2.5 billion globally. Jackson was one of the best-selling music artists of all time, with estimated sales of over 400 million records worldwide. He had 13 Billboard Hot 100 number one singles, third highest of any artist in the Hot 100 era, and was the first artist to have a top 10 single on the Billboard Hot 100 in 5 different decades. His honors include 15 Grammy Awards, 6 British Awards, a Golden Globe Award, 39 Guinness World Records, including the most successful entertainer of all time, Jackson's inductions, including the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice, and the vocal group Hall of Fame, and the Songwriters Hall of Fame, the Dance Hall of Fame, it making him the only recording artist to be inducted, and the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame. Let's get started with the Jackson family for a minute. The early life of the Jackson Five here, from the 50s to the 70s. Michael Joseph Jackson was born in Gary, Indiana on August 29th, 1958. He was the eighth of 10 children in the Jackson family, living in a two-bedroom house on Jackson Street. His mother, Catherine Esther Jackson, played the clarinet and piano. Had aspired to be a country and western performer, and worked part-time at Sears. That's the word. Sears. The- she was a Jehovah's Witness. His father, Joseph Walter Joe Jackson, a former boxer was a crane operator at the United States Steel Mill. Well, that's what it's called, United States Steel. And played guitar with a local rhythm and blues band, the Falcons, to supplement the family's income. Joe's great grandfather, July Jack Gale, no relations to Edward Gale, the fucking rapist. July Jack Gale was an U.S. Army Scout. Family lore held that he was also a Native American medicine man. Michael grew up with three sisters. Rebby Jackson, her real name was Maureen Rillette Jackson Brown, Latoya Jackson, and Janet Jackson, and five brothers. Let's see, Sigmund, Esco, Jackie Jackson, Toriano Adero Tito Jackson. Yeah, Toriano Adero Tito Jackson. Jermaine LaJuan Jackson, Mullen David Jackson, and Stephen Randall Randy Jackson. A sixth brother, Mullen's twin Brandon, died shortly after birth. In 1964, Michael and Mullen joined the Jackson Brothers, a band formed by their father, which included Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine, as backup musicians. playing congas and tambourine. Michael said that his father told him he had a fat nose and physically and emotionally abused him during rehearsals. He recalled that Joe often sat in a chair with a belt in his hand as he and his siblings rehearsed, ready to punish any mistakes. Joe acknowledged that he regularly whipped Michael. He regularly whipped Michael. Catherine said that although whipping came to be a considered abuse, that's what whipping came to be considered an abuse. It was a common way to discipline children when Michael was growing up. Michael was growing up though. That's a common way. Yeah, it was a common way to discipline children when Michael was growing up as a kid. Jackie, Tito, Jermaine, and Mullen denied that their father was abusive. That they all lied and said that the whippings which had a deeper impact on Michael because he was younger kept them disciplined and out of trouble. Michael said that during his youth he was lonely and isolated. Later in 1965, Michael began sharing lead vocals with Jermaine, and the group's name was changed to the Jackson Five. In 1965, the group won talent show. They won a talent show. Michael performed the dance to Robert Parker's 1965 song Barefoot and sang the Temptations' My Girl. From 1966 to 1968, the Jackson Five toured the Midwest. Why are you naming it? Okay, I mean, the Jackson's Five toured the Midwest. They frequently played a string. It played at a string of black clubs known as the Chitlin Circuit. The Chitlin Circuit as the opening act for like artists such as Sam and Dave, the OJ's. You know, Eddie Levert was already in the group. Gladys Knight, uh, and the late Etta James. The Jackson Five also performed at clubs and cocktail lounges, where the striptease shows were featured at local auditoriums and the high school dances. In 1967, especially in the summer of 1967, that was in August of 1967. That was around the time when the Parliaments had signed their deal to Rebel Out Records. That was a subsidiary parent record company of Motown Records. While touring while touring the East Coast, they won a weekly amateur night concert at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, New York. The Jackson Five recorded several songs for a Gary record label, Steeltown Records. Steeltown Records. Their first single, "Big Boy," was released in 1968. Bobby Taylor of the group called Bobby Taylor and the Band Coopers brought the Jackson Five to Motown after they opened for Taylor at Chicago's Regal Theater in 1968. Taylor produced some of their early Motown recordings, including a version of "Who's Loving You." After signing with Motown, and that's why I'm going to do this now. After signing with Motown Records, the Jackson family relocated to Los Angeles, California. In 1969, Motown executives decided Diana Ross should introduce the Jackson Five. Yeah, Diana Ross. She should introduce the Jackson Five to the public, partly to bolster her career in television, sending off what was considered Motown's last product of its production line. The Jackson Five made their first television appearance in 1969. Same thing happened with the Parliaments and Funkadelic. Same thing with the Parliaments and the Funkadelic. Groups appeared. They appeared there on a weekend. It appeared over before the weekend. It appeared around. It was. It appeared in 1969 on some show. In the the Jackson Five made their first television appearance in 1969 in the Miss Black America pageant, performing a cover of "It's Your Thing." That came from the Isley Brothers. Rolling Stone later described the young Michael as a prodigy with the overwhelming musical gifts, who quickly emerged as the main draw and lead singer. In January 1970, "I Want You Back" became the first Jackson 5 song to reach number one on the US Billboard Hot 100. It stayed there for 4 weeks. Three more singles with Motown topped the chart: ABC, "The Love You Save," and I'll Be There for You. Well, I'll be there. That means I'll be there. In May of 1971, the Jackson family moved into a large house at Havenhurst, a 2-acre, 0.81 ha estate in Encino, California. During this period, Michael developed from a child performer to a into a teen idol, which between like 1972 and 1975, he released four solo studio albums with Motown. "Got to Be There," "Ben," "Music and Me," and "Forever Michael." "Got to Be There" and "Ben," the title tracks from his first two solo albums to date, sold well as singles, as did a cover of Bobby Day's "Rockin' Robin." Michael maintained ties to the Jackson Five. The Jackson Five were later described as a cutting edge example of black crossover artists. They were frustrated by Motown's refusal to allow them creative input. Jackson's performance of their top five single, "Dancing Machine" on Soul Train, popularized the Robots dance. Jackson 5 left Motown in 1975, signing with Epic Records. There's a picture of there's a there's Tito, Jermaine, there's Tito, Jermaine, Randy, Jackie, Marlon, Michael, Latoya, Rebby, and Janet. It's Janet Jackson when she was a little girl. This is before. This is around the time when she was before she was featured on the TV show Good Times as Penny. Believe me, the Jackson Five, they left Motown in 1975, signing with Epic Records and renaming themselves the Jacksons. Their younger brother Randy joined the band around this time. Jermaine stayed with Motown and pursued a solo career. The Jacksons continued to tour internationally and released about six more albums between 1976 and 1984. The Michael the group's main songwriter during this time wrote songs such as "Shake Your Body Down to the Ground," "This Place Hotel," and "Can You Feel It." In 1977, Michael Jackson moved to New York City to star. Yeah, he moved to New York City to star as the Scarecrow in "The Wiz," a musical film directed by Sidney Lumet. Sidney Lumet, alongside Diana Ross again, Nipsey Russell, rest in peace, and Ted Ross. The film was a box office failure. Its score was arranged by Quincy Jones Jr., who later produced three of Jackson's solo albums. During his time in New York, Jackson frequented the Studio 54 nightclub. That's a club, the Studio 54 nightclub, where he heard early hip hop. This influenced his beatboxing on future tracks such as Working Day and Night, in 1978, Jackson broke his nose during a dance routine. A rhinoplasty led to breathing difficulties that later affected his career. He was referred to Stephen Hoffman, who was American plastic surgeon who had performed Jackson's operations um, over the years. Jackson's fifth solo album, yeah, this one explained it. Jackson's fifth solo album, Off the Wall, establishing him as a solo performer and helped him move from the bubblegum pop of his youth to more complex sounds. It produced four top 10 entries in the United States. Off the Wall, She's Out of My Life, and the chart topic singles Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You. Rock With You. The album reached number 3 on the US Billboard 200 and sold over 20 million copies worldwide. In 1980, Jackson won 3 American Music Awards for his solo work, favorite soul/R&B album, favorite soul/R&B male artist, and favorite soul/R&B single for Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. He also won a Grammy Award for the Best Male R&B Vocal Performance for 1979 with Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. In 1981, Jackson was the American Music Awards winner for favorite soul/R&B album and favorite soul/R&B male artist. Jackson felt Off the Wall was, I'm explaining how it is. Off the Wall should have made a bigger impact and was determined to exceed expectations with his next release. In 1980, he secured the highest royalty rate in the music industry, 37% of wholesale album profit. It's between 82 and 83, folks. The Motown 25 thing going on, throwing Motown 25. It's based on that. Jackson recorded with Freddie Mercury, who was Queen's lead singer from 1981 to 1983, recording demos of State of Shock, Victory, and There Must Be More to Life Than This. The recordings were intended for an album of duets, but according to Queen's manager, Jim Beach, the relationship soured when Jackson brought a llama into the recording studio. Yeah, one of those trash horses. And Jackson was upset by Mercury's drug use. There must be more than life than this was released in 2014. Jackson went on to record State of Shock with Mick Jagger. That was from the Rolling Stones. For the Jackson's album Victory. In 1982, Jackson contributed Someone in the Dark to the audiobook for the for the film E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Jackson's sixth album, Thriller, was released in late 1982. It was the best-selling album worldwide in 1983 and became the best-selling album of all time in the United States and the best-selling album of all time worldwide, selling an estimated 70 million copies. It topped the Billboard 200 chart for 37 weeks. For about 37 weeks, and was in the top 10 of the 200 for 80 consecutive weeks. It was the first album to produce 7 Billboard Hot 100 top 10 singles, including Billie Jean, Beat It, and Wanna Be Starting Something. On March 25th, 1983, the Jackson reunited with his brothers for Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, Forever. An NBC television special, the show aired on May 16th to an estimated audience 47 million, and featured the Jacksons and other Motown stars. Other Motown stars, uh, Jackson's solo performance of Billie Jean earned him his first Emmy Award nomination. Wearing a glove decorated with rhinestones, he debuted his moonwalk dance, and Jeffrey Daniel had taught him 3 years later, and it became his signature dance. In his repertoire, Jackson had originally turned down the invitation to the show, believing that he had been doing too much television. But at the request of Motown founder Berry Gordy III, or Berry Gordy Jr., he performed in exchange for an opportunity to do a solo performance. Rolling Stone reporter Michael Gilmore called the performance extraordinary. Jackson's performance drew comparisons to Elvis Presley and the Beatles' appearances on the Ed Sullivan Show. The Ed Sullivan Show. Anna Kisseljaw, what's his name? Anna Kisselgoff of the New York Times praised that the perfect timing and technique involved in the dance. Gordy described being mesmerized by the performance. At the 26th annual Grammy Awards, that's right, you said, you hear me say it, the 26th Grammy Awards, the 26th annual Grammy Awards, Thriller won 8 awards, and Jackson won an award for the E.T. the Extraterrestrial storybook, winning 8 Grammys in one ceremony. It's a record he holds with the band Santana. Jackson and Quincy Jones Jr. Let me explain this. Jackson and Quincy Jones Jr. won the award for Producer of the Year, non-classical. Thriller won the Album of the Year, with Jackson as the album's artist and Jones as its co-producer. And the single won Best Pop Vocal Performance Male Award for Jackson. Beat It won the record of the year. And Best Rock Performance, that's male. Best Rock Vocal Performance, that's male. For Billie Jean, won 2 Grammy Awards, Best R&B Song and Best R&B Performance Vocal Performance. That start with male again. With Jackson as songwriter and singer respectively. Thriller won the Grammy for the Best Engineer Recording, non-classical, acknowledging Bruce Sweden for his work on the album. At the 11th Annual American Music Awards, the AMA, the American Music Awards, Jackson won another 8 awards and became the youngest artist to win the Award of Merit. He also won favorite male artist, favorite soul slash R&B artist, favorite pop slash rock artist. Beat It won favorite soul slash R&B video, favorite pop slash rock video, pop slash rock video, and favorite pop slash rock single. The album won favorite soul slash R&B album and favorite pop slash rock album. Thriller Thriller sales doubled. Let me tell you about Thriller. The Thriller sales have already have been doubled after the release of an extended music video. Michael Jackson's Thriller. Michael Jackson's Thriller, which sees Jackson dancing with a horde of zombies. The success transformed Jackson into a dominant force in global pop culture. Jackson had the highest royalty rate in the music industry, and that point, with about $2 for every album sold, equivalent to $6 in in like a year ago, and was making record-breaking profits. The dolls modeled after Jackson appeared in stores in May of 1984. In May of 1984 for $12 each. In the same year, the making of Michael Jackson's Thriller a documentary that was about a music video that won a Grammy for the best music video long form. Time described Jackson's influence at that point as a star of records, radio, rock, video, a one-man rescue team for the music business, a songwriter who sets the beat for a decade, a dancer with the fanciest feet on the street, a singer who cuts across all boundaries of taste and what's it called, style and color too. The New York Times wrote, that's the NYT. The New York Times, the NYT, wrote, in the world of pop music, there is Michael Jackson and there is everybody else. May 14th of that year. Well, May 14th, 1984, ex-President Ronald Reagan, let me tell you this. Ex-President Ronald Reagan gave Jackson an award recognizing his support of alcohol and drug abuse charities, and in recognition of his support for the Ad Council's and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration's drunk driving prevention campaign. Jackson allowed the campaign to use Beat It for its public service announcements, the Pepsi incident, and other commercial activities. In late 1983, Jackson and his brothers partnered with PepsiCo in a $5 million promotional deal that broke records for a celebrity endorsement equivalent to $14.7 million in a year, in last year. The first Pepsi campaign, which ran in the United States from 1983 to 1984, and launched its new generation theme. New generation theme included tour sponsorship, public relations events, and in-store displays. Jackson helped to create the advertisement and suggested using his song Billie Jean with revised lyrics as its jingle. On January 27th of 1984, Michael and other members of the Jacksons filmed a Pepsi commercial overseen by Phil Dusenberry, a BBDO ad agency executive, and Alan Potash, Pepsi's worldwide creative director at the Shrine Auditorium in Los Angeles, California during a simulated concert. Before a full house of fans, pyrotechnics accidentally set Jackson's hair on fire. It accidentally set Jackson's hair on fire, causing third-degree burns, like second, not third-degree burns. It was causing second-degree burns to his scalp. Jackson had underwent treatment to hide the scars that he had from the rhino, from whatever happened at the when he broke his nose years ago, back in the 70s. Jackson underwent treatment to hide the scars and had his third rhinoplasty shortly thereafter. Pepsi settled out of court and Jackson donated $1.5 million settlement to the Brotman Medical Center in Culver City, California. It's now closed. Michael Jackson Burn Center was named in his honor. Jackson signed a second agreement with Pepsi in the late 1980s for $10 million. The second campaign covered 20 countries and provided financial support for Jackson's Bad album. In 1987-88 World Tour, Jackson had endorsements and advertising deals with other companies such as LA Gear, Suzuki, and Sony, but none were as significant. None were as significant as his deals with Pepsi. The Victory Tour of 1984 headlined the Jacksons and showcased Jackson's new soul material to more than 2 million Americans. It was the last tour he did with his brothers. Following controversy, the concert's ticket sales, Jackson donated his share to the of the proceeds, an estimated $3 to $5 million to charity. During the last concert of the Victory Tour, in at the Dodger Stadium, uh, in Los Angeles, California, in L.A., Jackson announced his split from his brothers, the Jacksons, during the "Shake Your Body" uh, song. The "Shake Your Body" song. His charitable work continued with the release of "We Are the World," co-written with Lionel Richie, which raised money for the poor in the United States and Africa. It earned $63 million, equivalent to $171 million in like last year, and became the one of the best-selling singles of all time with 20 million copies sold. It won 4 Grammy Awards in 1985, including the Song of the Year for Jackson and Richie as writers. The project's creators received 2 Special American Music Awards honors, one for the creation of the song and another for the USA for Africa idea. Jackson Jones and promoter Ken Craig received special awards for their roles in the song's creation. Jackson collaborated with Paul McCartney from the Beatles in the early 1980s and learned that McCartney was making $40 million a year from owning the rights to other artists' songs. By 1983, Jackson had begun buying publishing rights to others' songs, but he was careful with his acquisitions, only bidding. I forgot about all this shit. Only bidding on a few of the dozens that were offered to him. Jackson's early acquisitions of music catalogs and song copyrights, such as the Sly Stone collection, included everyday people, Len Berry's 123, and Dion DiMucci, Dion DiMucci's The Wanderer, and Runaround Sue. In 1984, Robert Holmes, a court, announced he was selling the ATV music publishing catalog, compromising the publishing rights to nearly 4,000 songs, including most of the Beatles material. In 1981, McCartney had been offered the catalog of 20 pounds of quid, 20 million pounds of quid. That means 40 million. Jackson submitted a bid of $46 million in November 20th of 1984. That was when Jackson and McCartney were unable to make a joint purchase. McCartney did not want to be on the sole owner of the Beatles songs and did not pursue an offer on his own. Jackson's agents were unable to come to a deal, and in May of 1985, left talks after having spent more than $1 million and 4 months of due diligence work on the negotiations. In June of that year, Jackson and Branca learned that Charles Koppelman's and Marty Bandier's the entertainment company had made a tentative offer to buy ATV Music for $50 million. In early August of 85, I did not know, Holmes, a court, contacted Jackson and talks resumed. Jackson's increased bid is $47.5 million, equivalent to $129 million in last year. Was accepted because he could lose the deal more quickly, having already completed due diligence. Jackson agreed to visit Holmes' court in Australia, where he would appear on the Channel 7 Perth Telethon. His purchase of ATV Music was finalized on August 10th, 1985. The tabloid speculation, let's start increasing this. Jackson's skin had been medium brown during his youth, but the mid 80s gradually grew paler. The change drew widespread media coverage, including speculation that he had been bleaching his skin lately. His dermatologist, Arnold Klein, who was his dermatologist, said that he observed in 1983 that Jackson had vitiligo, not revitiligo, vitiligo, a condition characterized by patches of the skin losing their pigment. He also identified discoid lupus erythematosus in Jackson. He diagnosed Jackson with lupus that year and with vitiligo. 1986. Vitiligo's drastic effects on the body can cause psychological distress. Jackson used a fair-colored makeup and possibly skin bleaching prescription creams to cover up the uneven blotches of color caused by the illness. The creams would depigment the blotches, and with the application of makeup, he would appear very pale. Jackson said he had not purposely bleached his skin and could not control his vitiligo, adding, "When people make up stories that I don't want to be who I am, it hurts me." He became friends with Klein and Klein's assistant, Debbie Rowe, who later became Jackson's second wife. and the mother of his two children. In his 1988 autobiography, yeah, it's a Ellsworth says in his 1988 autobiography, in a 1993 interview, Jackson. Well, get off the shit. I don't want to overcharge this thing too much. In his 1988 autobiography and a 1993 interview, Jackson said he had two children, not two children. Let me rephrase. He had two rhinoplasty surgeries and a cleft chin surgery, but no more than that. No more than that. He said that he lost weight in the early 1980s because of a change in diet to achieve a dancer's body. Witnesses reported that he was often dizzy and speculated he was suffering from nervosa. Anorexia nervosa. Periods of weight loss became a recurring problem later in his life. After his death, Jackson's mother said that he first turned to cosmetic procedures to remedy his vitiligo because he did not want to look like a spotted cow. She said he had received more than the two cosmetic surgeries. He claimed and speculated that he had become addicted to them. In 1986, tabloids reported that Jackson slept in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber to slowly aging and pictured him lying in a glass box. The claim was untrue, and tabloids reported that he spread the story himself. They also reported that Jackson took female hormone shots to keep his voice high and facial hair wispy. Proposed to Elizabeth Taylor, uh, and possibly had a shrine of her and had cosmetic surgery on his eyes. Jackson's manager, Frank DeLeo, denied all of them except for Jackson having a chamber. DeLeo added, I don't know if he sleeps in it. I'm not for it. But Michael thinks it's something that's probably healthy for him. He's a bit of a health fanatic. When Jackson took his pet chimpanzee Bubbles to tour in Japan, the media portrayed Jackson as an aspiring Disney cartoon character who befriended animals. It was also reported that Jackson had offered to buy the bones of Joseph Merrick. In June of 1987, the Chicago Tribune reported that his publicist, bidding $1 million for the skeleton of the London Hospital Medical College on his behalf. The college maintained the skeleton was not for sale. DeLeo said that Jackson had an absorbent interest in Merrick, purely based on his awareness of the ethical, medical, and historical significance. In September of 1986, using the false hyperbaric chamber story, the British tabloid The Sun branded Jackson Wacko Jacko, a name Jackson came to despise. The Atlantic noted that the name Jacko has racist connotations as it originates from Jacko Macaco, a monkey used in monkey baiting matches at the Westminster Pit in the early 1820s, and Jacko was used in Cockney slang to refer to monkeys in general. Jackson worked with George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola on the 17-minute, $30 million film Captain EO, a 3D film which ran from 1986 at Disneyland and Epcot, and later at Tokyo Disneyland and Euro Disneyland. After having been removed from the late 1990s, it returned to the theme park for several years after Jackson's death. But in 1987, Jackson disassociated himself from the Jehovah's Witness. The same Jehovah's Witness that his mother Catherine Jackson was working with. But Catherine Jackson said this might have been because some witnesses strongly opposed the Thriller video. They opposed the Thriller video. Michael had denounced it in a witness publication in 1984. We're going to the late 80s, early 90s thing. Bad autobiography in the Neverland thing. Jackson's first album in 5 years, Bad, was highly anticipated with the industry, expecting another major success. It became the first album to produce 5 US #1 singles. I Just Can't Stop Loving You, Bad, The Way You Make Me Feel, Man in the Mirror, and Dirty Diana. Another song, Smooth Criminal, peaked at #7. Bad won the 1988 Grammy for the Best Engineered Recording. Non-classical in the 1990 Grammy Award for Best Music Video. Short form for Leave Me Alone. Jackson won an award for achievement at the American Music Awards in 1989 after Bad generated 5 #1 singles, became the first album to top the charts in 25 countries, and the best-selling album worldwide in 1987. And 1988, by 2012, it had sold between 30 to 45 million copies. 30 to 45 million copies worldwide. But the Bad World Tour ran from September 12, 1987 to January 14th of 1989 in Japan. The tour had 14 sellouts. It drew 570,000 people, nearly tripling the previous record for a single tour. The 504,000 people who attended 7 sold-out shows at the Wembley Stadium. That was in London, England, United Kingdom. It was in London, England, United Kingdom. See, let me explain it to you. Previous Sunday, AEW All Out had done some good. See, that pay-per-view was already taking place at that same building. The Wembley Stadium is the same building that WWE had the old 1992 SummerSlam pay-per-view at, with Bret Hart and the late David Smith, the British Bulldog. It was two brother versus brother-in-law battling. So, and it's when it happened in Wembley Stadium. So, yep, the 504,000 people who attended 7 sold-out shows at Wembley Stadium set a new Guinness World Record. In 1988, Jackson released his autobiography, Moonwalk. Moonwalk, with the input from Stephen Davis and Jackie Onassis, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis. That could be the widow of President John Kennedy. It sold 2,000 copies and reached the top of the New York Times bestsellers list. Jackson discussed his childhood, the Jackson 5, and the abuse from his father Joseph. He attributed his changing facial appearance to three plastic surgeries, puberty, weight loss, a strict vegetarian diet, a change in hairstyle, and stage lighting. In June, Jackson was honored with the Grand Vermeil Medal of the City of Paris by the then mayor of Paris, Jacques Chirac. During his stay in the city as the part of the Bad World tour in October, Jackson released the film Moonwalker, which featured live footage and short films starring Jackson and Joe Pesci. In the U.S., it was released direct to video, and it became the best-selling video cassette in the country. The RIAA, Recording Industry Association of America, certified it as 8 times platinum in the U.S. In March of 1988, Jackson had purchased a 2,700 acres of land near Santa Ynez, California, to build a home, Neverland Ranch, at a cost of $17 million, equivalent to $42 million in like last year. He installed a Ferris wheel, a carousel, a movie theater, and a zoo, a security staff. Yeah, and a security staff of 40 patrolled the grounds. Shortly afterwards, he appeared in the first Western television advertisement in the Soviet Union. Jackson became known as the King of Pop, a nickname that Jackson's publicist embraced. When Elizabeth Taylor presented him with the Soul Train Heritage Award it's a Soul Train Heritage Award in 1989, she called him the true King of Pop, rock and soul. President George Herbert Walker Bush designated him the White House's Artist of the Decade. From 1985 to 1990, Jackson donated $455,000 to the United Negro College Fund, and all the profits from his single "Man in the Mirror" went to charity. His rendition of "You Were There" at Sammy Davis Jr.'s 60th birthday celebration won Jackson a second Emmy nomination. Jackson was the best-selling artist of the 1980s. We're going to the early 90s with the Dangerous album and some public social work. In March 1991, Jackson renewed his contract with Sony. Jackson renewed his contract with Sony for $65 million. It's equivalent to $140 million in like last year. That goes back to March of 91. A record-breaking deal, beating Neil Diamond's renewal contract with Columbia Records in 1991. He released his eighth album, Dangerous, co-produced with Teddy Riley. It was certified 8 times platinum in the US, and by 2018 has sold 32 million copies. 32 million copies worldwide. In the US, the first single, Black or White, was the album's highest charting song. It was number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 7 weeks and achieved similar chart performances worldwide. The second single, Remember the Time, I think Eddie Murphy was he did a cameo in the music video. Yep, that second single, Remember the Time, peaked at number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 singles chart At the end of 1992, Dangerous was the best-selling album of the year worldwide in black or white, the best-selling single of the year, worldwide at the Billboard Music Awards in 1993. He performed "Remember the Time" at the Soul Train Music Awards in a chair, saying he twisted his ankle during dance rehearsals. In the UK, "Heal the World" made number two on the charts in 1992. Jackson founded Jackson founded the Heal the World Foundation in that same year. The charity brought underprivileged children to Jackson's ranch to use the theme park rides, and sent millions of dollars around the globe to help children threatened by war, poverty, and disease. That July, Jackson published a second book, Dancing the Dream, a collection of poetry. The Dangerous World Tour ran between June 1992 and November of 1993, and grossed $100 million, and it's equivalent to $200 million in last year. Jackson performed for 3.5 million people in 70 concerts, of all of which were outside the U.S. Part of the proceeds went to the Heal the World Foundation. Heal the World Foundation. Jackson has sold the broadcast rights of the tour to HBO for $20 million, a record-breaking deal that still stands to this day. Following the death of HIV/AIDS spokesperson and friend Ryan White, Jackson pleaded with the Clinton administration at Bill Clinton's inaugural gala, to give money to HIV/AIDS charities and research, and performed "Gone Too Soon," a song dedicated to White, and "Heal the World" at the gala. Jackson visited Africa in early 1992. On his first stop to Gabon, he was greeted by more than 100,000 people, some of them carrying signs that read Welcome Home, Michael," and was awarded an Officer of the National Order of Merit from President Omar Bongo. During his trip to the Ivory Coast, Jackson was crowned King Sani by a tribal chief. He thanked his dignitaries, and French and English signed documents formalizing his kingship, and sat on a golden throne while presiding over ceremonial dances. In January of 1993, Jackson performed at the Super Bowl XXVII halftime show in Pasadena, California. The NFL sought a big name artist to keep ratings high during halftime, following the dwindling audience figures. It was the first Super Bowl whose halftime performance drew greater audience figures than the game. Jackson played "Jam," "Billie Jean," "Black or White," and "Heal the World." Dangerous Dangerous rose 90 places in the US albums chart after the performance. Jackson gave a 90-minute interview with Oprah Winfrey on February 10th, 1993. He spoke of his childhood abuse at the hands of his father, Joseph. He believed that he had missed out on much of his childhood, and he said this, that he often cried from loneliness. He denied tabloid rumors that he had bought the bones of the Elephant Man, slept in the hyperbaric oxygen chamber, or bleached his skin, and stated for the first time that he had vitiligo. After the interview, Dangerous re-entered the US albums chart in the top 10 more than a year after its release. In January 1993, Jackson won 3 American Music Awards, like those for favorite pop/rock album. That's for Dangerous. Favorite soul/R&B single. That's for Remember the Time that Teddy Riley had produced, and was the first to win the International Artist Award Excellence. Yes, that's what it says. The International Artist Award of Excellence in February. He won the Living Legend Award at the 35th Annual Grammy Awards in Los Angeles, California. He attended the award ceremony with Brooke Shields. Dangerous was nominated for best vocal for the best vocal performance. That was for Black or White. Best R&B performance, like vocal performance, for Jam, and best R&B song for Jam, and Bruce Swedian and Teddy Riley won the Grammy for best engineered non-classical. Between 1993 and 1995, there's the first child sexual abuse accusations that started happening, and then the first marriage started happening. Started happening. In August of 1993, Jackson was accused of child sexual abuse by a 13-year-old boy, Jordan Chandler, and his father, Eben Chandler. Jordan said he and Jackson had engaged in acts of kissing, masturbation, and oral sex. While Jordan's mother initially told police that she did not believe Jackson had molested him, her position wavered a few days later. Eben Eben was recorded discussing his intention to pursue charges, which Jackson used to argue that he was the victim of a jealous father trying to extort money. Jackson's oldest sister, Latoya, accused him of being a pedophile. Well, Latoya does not like all the pervy shit that her brother did, you know, with the little boys. She later, seriously, Jordan Chandler's mother later retracted this by saying that she had been forced into it by her abusive husband. The police raided Jackson's home in August and found 2 legal large format large format art books featuring young boys playing, running, and swimming in various states of undress. Jackson denied knowing of the book's content and claimed if they were it were there, someone had to send them to him, and he did not open them. Jordan Chandler gave police a description of Jackson's genitals. A strip search was made, and the jurors felt the description was not a match. In January of 1994, Jackson settled with the Chandler family out of court for a reported total sum of $23 million. The police never pressed criminal charges, citing a lack of evidence. Without Jordan's testimony, the state closed its investigation on September 22nd, 1994. Jackson had been not talking about it. I mean, Jackson had been taking painkillers for his reconstructive scalp surgeries administered due to the Pepsi commercial accident in 1984, and became dependent on them to cope with the stress of the sexual abuse allegations. On November 12th, 1993, Jackson canceled the remainder of the Dangerous World Tour due to health problems, stress, and the allegations and painkiller addiction. He thanked his close friend Elizabeth Taylor for support, encouragement, and counsel. The end of the tour concluded his sponsorship deal with Pepsi. In late 1993, Jackson proposed to the late Lisa Marie Presley. Let me go to the face here. The late Lisa Marie Presley, the daughter of Priscilla Presley and the late Elvis Presley. Over the phone, they married in La Vega, Dominican Republic, in May 1994 by civil judge Hugo Francisco Alvarez Perez. The tabloid media speculated that the wedding was like a publicity stunt to deflect away from Jackson's sexual abuse allegations and jumpstart Presley's career as a singer. Their marriage ended more than a year later, and they separated in December of 1995. Presley cited irreconcilable differences when filing for divorce the next month, and only sought to reclaim her maiden name as her settlement. After the divorce, Judge Perez said they lasted longer than I thought they would. I gave them a year. They lasted a year and a half. Presley later said that she and Jackson had attempted to reconcile intermittently for 4 years following their divorce, and that she had traveled uh, the world to be with him. But later in January 12th of this year, Lisa Marie Presley died in her home in California. She was like 54 years old, I think. She was in her 50s, I think. R.I.P. Lisa Marie Presley. Jackson composed music for the Sega Genesis video game Sonic the Hedgehog 3, but left the project around the time the sexual abuse allegations surfaced and went uncredited. The Sega Technical Institute director Roger Hector and the Sonic co-creator Naoto Oshima Naoto Oshima said that Jackson's involvement was terminated and his music reworked following the allegations. However, Jackson's musical director Brad Buxer, and other members of Jackson's team. Jackson went uncredited because he was unhappy with how Genesis replicated his music. Yep, history, second marriage, fatherhood, and blood on the dance floor. History in the mix. In June of 1995, Jackson released the double album History, Past, Present, and Future, Book One. The first disc, History Begins, is a greatest hits album that was later reissued in 2001 as the greatest hits History Volume One. The second disc, History Continues, contains 13 original songs. They're all songs, original songs. There's 13 original songs and two cover versions. The album debuted at number one on the charts and has been certified for 8 million shipments in the US. It is the best-selling multi-disc album of all time, with 20 million copies, 40 million units sold worldwide. History received a Grammy nomination for Album of the Year. The New York Times reviewed it as the testimony of a musician whose self-pity now equals his talent. The first single from History was Scream slash Childhood. Scream that happens to be a duet with Michael Jackson's youngest sister, uh, which you have seen in the picture, Janet Jackson. Protests the media's treatment of Jackson during the 1993 child abuse allegations against him. The single reached number 5 on the Billboard Hot 100 and received a Grammy nomination for Best Pop Collaboration with the Vocals. The second single, You Are Not Alone, holds the Guinness World Record for for the first song to debut at number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. It received a Grammy nomination for Best Vocal Pop Performance in 1995. In 1995, the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, and other groups complained that Jew me, sue me, everybody do me, kick me, kike me, don't you black or white me. The original lyrics of They Don't Care About Us were anti-Semitic. Jackson released a version with the revised words. The revised words in late 1995. Jackson was admitted to a hospital after collapsing during rehearsals for a televised performance caused by a stress-related panic attack. In November, Jackson merged with ATV, his ATV music catalog with Sony's music publishing division, creating Sony slash ATV Music Publishing. He retained ownership of half the company, earning $95 million up front, equivalent to $182 million like last year, as well as the rights to more songs. Earth Song was the third single released from History and topped the UK singles chart for 6 weeks. Over Christmas 1995, well, I was like in junior high when this happened. I was in junior high when this happened. It became the 87th best-selling single in the UK at the 1996 British Awards. Well, it's called the Brit Awards. Jackson's performance of Earth Song was disrupted by Pulp singer Jarvis Cocker. Jarvis Cocker, who was protesting what Cocker saw as Jackson's Christ-like persona. Jackson said the stage invasion was disgusting, and it was like quote unquote disgusting and cowardly. What did he mean by disgusting and cowardly? But in 1996, Jackson won a Grammy Award. He won a Grammy for a Best Music Video short form for Scream. Well, she did that with her sister Janet Jackson. And an American Music Award for favorite pop rock male artist. In July 1996, Jackson performed for Sultan Hassanal Bolkiah's 50th birthday at the Gerudong Park Amphitheater. which was specifically built for that birthday concert. Jackson was reportedly said that at $17 million, equivalent to $32 million in like last year. Jackson promoted History with the History World Tour from September 7, 1996. That's where Tupac Shakur was killed in Las Vegas, Nevada. It was a drive-by. To October 15th, 1997. He performed 82 concerts in 5 continents, 35 countries, and 58 cities to over 4.5 million fans. His most attended tour, it grossed over $165 million. During the tour in Sydney, Australia, Jackson married Debbie Rowe, a dermatology assistant who was 6 months pregnant with her child. Michael Joseph Jackson Jr., who was commonly known as Prince, was born on February 13th, 1997. His sister Katherine Jackson was born on April 3rd, 1998. Jackson Rowe divorced in 2000, conceded custody of the children. With the $8 million settlement, that was equivalent to $14.1 million in last year. But in 2004, after the second child abuse allegations against Jackson, she returned to court to reclaim custody. The suit was settled in 2006. In 1997, Jackson released Blood on the Dance Floor, History in the Mix, which contained remixes of singles from History, and five new songs. Worldwide sales stand at 6 million copies, making it the best-selling remix album. It reached #1 in the UK, as did the single Blood on the Dance Floor in the US, and the album reached number 24 and was certified platinum. Then the label dispute and the Invincible album. From October 1997 to September 2001, Jackson worked on his 10th solo album, Invincible, which cost $30 million to record. In June 1999, Jackson joined Luciano Pavarotti for a war child benefit concert in Modena, Italy. The show raised $1 million for the refugees in the Kosovo War. And additional funds for the children of Guatemala. That's what the children are. The children of Guatemala. Later that month, Jackson organized a series of Michael Jackson and Friends benefit concerts in Germany and Korea. Other artists involved included Slash from Guns N' Roses, the Scorpions, Boyz II Men, the late Luther Ronzoni Vandross Jr. Luther Vandross. Got Mariah Carey, A.R. Rahman. It means Allah Raka Rahman. Prabhu Deva, Sundaram, Shobana, Andrea Bocelli, and Luciano Pavarotti. The proceeds went to the Nelson Mandela Children's Fund, and the Red Cross and the UNESCO. In 1999, Jackson was presented with the Outstanding Humanitarian Award at the Bollywood Movie Awards in New York City, where he noted Mahatma Gandhi. That's Mahatma Gandhi. To have been an inspiration for him. From August 1999 to 2000, he lived in New York City at 4 East 74th Street. At the turn of the century, Jackson won an American Music Award as Artist of the 1980s. In 2000, Guinness World Records recognized him for supporting 39 charities, more than any other entertainer. In September 2001, two 30th anniversary concerts were held at the Madison Square Garden to mark Jackson's 30th year as a solo artist. Jackson performed with his brothers for the first time since 1984. Since 1984, the show also features Maya Marie Harrison, Usher Raymond IV, the late Whitney Houston, Destiny's Child, Monica Arnold, Liza Minnelli, and Slash. The first show was marred by technical lapses, and the crowd booed a speech by Marlon Brando. Almost 30 million people watched the television broadcast of the shows in November. After the September 11th attacks, Jackson helped organize the United We Stand. What More Can I Give benefit concert at the RFK Stadium in Washington, D.C. on October 21st, 2001. Jackson performed What More Can I Give as the finale. The release of Invincible was preceded by a dispute between Jackson and his record label Sony Music Entertainment. Jackson had expected the licenses to the masters of his albums to revert to him in the early 2000s, after which he would be able to promote the material. However, he pleased and keep the profits, but clauses in the contract set the revert date years into the future. Jackson sought an early exit from his contract. Invincible was released on October 30th, 2001. It was Jackson's full-length album in 6 years, and the last album of original material he released in his lifetime. It debuted at #1 in 13 countries and went on to sell 8 million copies worldwide, receiving double platinum certification in the US. On January 9, 2002, uh, Jackson won his 22nd American Music Award. That was for the Artist of the Century. Later that year, an anonymous surrogate mother gave birth to Prince Michael Jackson II. His third child, nicknamed Blanket, Daddy nicknamed him Blanket, who had been conceived by artificial insemination. On November 20th, Jackson briefly held Blanket over the railing of his hotel room in Berlin, four stories above ground level, prompting widespread criticism in the media. Jackson apologized for the incident, calling it a terrible mistake. On January 22nd, promoter Marcel Abraham filed a breach of contract complaint against Jackson for failing to perform two planned 1999 concerts. In March, a Santa Maria jury ordered Jackson to pay Abraham $5.3 million. On December 18, 2003, Jackson's attorneys dropped all appeals on the verdict and settled the lawsuit for an undisclosed amount. On April 24th, 2002, Jackson performed at the Apollo Theater. The concert was a fundraiser for the DNC, the Democratic National Committee. Former President Bill Clinton, the money collected would be used to encourage citizens to vote. It raised $2.5 million. The concert was called the Michael Jackson Live at the Apollo. And was one of Jackson's final onstage performances. In July of 2002, Jackson called Sony Music chairman Tommy Mottola a racist. That's Tommy Mottola. He called him a racist, and he said this. Oh, he called, and this him saying like, "Oh man, Michael Jackson called Tommy Mottola a racist and a very, very, very devilish." Yeah, yeah. Back in 2002, Michael Jackson called Tommy Mottola a racist and a very, very, very devilish one at that, and someone who exploits black artists for his own gain at Al Sharpton's National Action Network in Harlem. The accusation prompted Sharpton to form a coalition investigating whether Mottola exploited black artists. Jackson charged that Mottola. Let me tell you, Jackson charged that Mottola had called his colleague Herb Gotti a fat nigger. He called Irving Domingo Lorenzo Jr., who's professionally known as Herb Gotti, a fat Nigger, a fat nigger. Responding to those attacks, Sony issued a statement calling them ludicrous, spiteful, and hurtful, and defended Mottola, who was someone who had championed Jackson's career for many years. For many years, Sony ultimately refused to renew Jackson's contract and claimed that a $25 million promotional campaign that had failed because Jackson refused to tour in the U.S. for the Invincible album. There's one here, documentary and all that. Number one, second child abuse allegations, and quote on everything. In the beginning of May 2002, a documentary film crew led by Martin Bashir. Martin Bashir followed Jackson for several months. The documentary broadcast in February 2003 is called "Living with Michael Jackson." It showed Jackson holding hands and discussing sleeping sleep arrangements with a 12-year-old boy. He said that he saw nothing wrong with having sleepovers with minors and sharing his bed and bedroom with various people, which aroused the controversy that he insisted that the sleepovers were not sexual. They were not sexual, and that his words had been misunderstood. In October 2003, Jackson received the key to the city of Las Vegas from Mayor Oscar Goodman. On November 18, 2003, Sony released the number one's greatest hits compilation album. It was certified 5 times platinum by the RIAA and 10 times platinum in the UK for shipments of at least 3 million units. On December 18, 2003, Santa Barbara authorities charged Jackson with 7 counts of child molestation and 2 counts of intoxicating a minor with alcoholic drinks. Yeah. Yes, alcoholic drinks. Jackson denied the allegations and pleaded not guilty. The People versus Jackson trial began on January 31st, 2005 in Santa Maria, California, and lasted until the end of May. Jackson found the experience stressful and it affected his health. If convicted, he would have faced up to 20 years in prison. On June 13th, 2005, Jackson was acquitted on all counts. FBI files on Jackson, released in 2009, revealed the FBI's role in the 2005 trial and the 1993 allegations, and showed that the FBI found no evidence of criminal conduct on Jackson's behalf. Final years, financial problems, thriller, 25. This is it. And after the trial, Jackson became reclusive. In June 2005, he moved to Bahrain as a guest of Sheikh Abdullah. In early 2006, it was announced that Jackson had signed a contract with a Bahrain startup, Two C's Records. Two C's Records. Nothing came of the deal, and the Two C's CEO Guy Holmes said later said that it was never finalized. Holmes also found that Jackson was on the verge of bankruptcy and was involved in 47 ongoing lawsuits. By September 2006, Jackson was no longer affiliated with Two C's. In April 2006, Jackson agreed to use a piece of his ATV catalog stake, then worth about $1 billion as collateral against his $270 million worth of loans from Bank of America. The Bank of America has sold the loans to Fortress Investments, an investment company that buys distressed loans. The year before, as the part of the agreement, Fortress Investments Fortress Investments provided Jackson a new loan of $300 million with reduced interest payments, equivalent to $440 million like last year. Sony Music would have the option to buy half of his stake, or about 25% of the catalog, at a set price. Jackson's financial managers had urged him to shed part of his stake to avoid bankruptcy. Michael Jackson was about to go into bankruptcy, bro. He was going on the verge of bankruptcy, bro. He was about to be broke by at least 2005, 2006. He would be having no money until then. The main house at Neverland Ranch was closed as a cost-cutting measure while Jackson lived in Bahrain at the hospitality of Abdullah. At least 30 of Jackson's employees had not been paid on time and were owed $306,000 in back wages. Jackson was ordered to pay the $100,000 in penalties. Jackson never returned to Neverland after his acquittal. In mid 2006, Jackson moved to Grouse Lodge, a residential recording studio near Rosemount, County Westmeath, Ireland. There he began work. There he began work on a new album with the American producers like will.i.am and Roddy Jerkins. That November, Jackson invited an Access Hollywood camera crew into the studio in Westmeath. On November 15th, Jackson briefly joined in on a performance of "We Are the World" at the World Music Awards in London, England, United Kingdom. His last public performance and accepted the Diamond Award for sale of 100 million records. He returned to U.S. in December, settling in Las Vegas that month. He attended James Brown's funeral in Augusta, Georgia. In Augusta, Georgia, where he gave a eulogy, calling Brown his greatest inspiration. In 2007, Jackson and Sony bought another music publishing company, Famous Music LLC, formerly owned by Viacom. The deal gave Jackson the rights to songs by, by Eminem and Beck, among others. In a brief interview, Jackson said he had no regrets about his career despite his problems and deliberate attempts to hurt him. That March, Jackson visited a U.S. Army post in Japan, Camp Zama, to greet more than 3,000 troops and families. 3,000 troops and families uh, and their families included. As of September, Jackson was still working on his next album, which that he never completed. In 2008, the 25th anniversary of Thriller, Jackson and Sony released Thriller 25 with two remixes released as singles. The Girl Is Mine 2008 and Wanna Be Starting Something 2008 for Jackson's 50th birthday. Sony BMG released a series of greatest hits albums, King of Pop, with different track lists for the different regions. That July, Fortress Investments threatened to foreclose on Neverland Ranch, which Jackson had used as collateral for his loans. Fortress sold Jackson's debts to Colony Capital LLC in November. Jackson transferred Neverland Ranch title to Sycamore Valley, the Sycamore Valley Ranch Company. That's what it is. What's the name? Sycamore Valley Ranch Company LLC. It's a joint venture between Jackson and Colony Capital LLC. The deal earned him $35 million. In 2009, Jackson arranged to sell a collection of his memorabilia of more than 1,000 items through Julian's auction house, but canceled the auction in April. In March 2009, amid speculation about his finances and health, Jackson announced a series of comeback concerts. This Is It, a press conference at the O2 Arena in London, England, UK. The shows were to be his first major concerts since the History World Tour in 1997. Jackson suggested that he would retire after the shows. The initial plan was for 10 concerts in London, followed by his shows in Paris, New York City, and Mumbai. Randy Phillips, the president and the chief executive of AEG Live, predicted the first 10 dates would earn Jackson 50, I was like 50 million pounds or whatever, or quid. The London residency was increased to 50 dates. After the record-breaking ticket sales, more than 1 million were sold in less than 2 hours. The concerts were to run from July 13th, 2009 to March 6, 2010. Jackson moved to Los Angeles where he rehearsed in the weeks leading up to the tour under the direction of choreographer. The choreographer goes by the name of Kenny Ortega, whom he had worked with during his previous tours. Rehearsals took place at the Forum in the Staples Center, owned by AEG. By this joint, by I forgot. By this point, Jackson's debt had grown to almost $500 million. By the time of his death, he was 3 or 4 months behind payments of his home in San Fernando Valley. San Fernando Valley, bro. Yeah. The Independent reported that Jackson had planned a string of further ventures. He decided to recoup his debts, including a world tour, a new album, films, and a museum and a casino. We're going to go to the death. We'll go to the death thing because it's more tragic to begin with. It's bad. And I gotta read the huge ones. Let's go to like 2 hours. Let's go take 2 hours. On June 25th, on June 25th, 2009, less than 3 weeks before his concert residency was due to begin in London with all concerts sold out, Michael Joseph Jackson died from cardiac arrest caused by a propofol and benzodiazepine overdose. Conrad Murray, his personal physician, had given Jackson various medications to help him sleep at his rented mansion and home in Holmby Hills, Los Angeles. Paramedics received a 911 call at 12:22 Pacific time and arrived 3 minutes later. Jackson was not breathing and CPR was performed. Resuscitation resuscitation efforts continued en route to Ronald Reagan UCLA Medical Center. And for more than an hour after Jackson's arrival there, but were unsuccessful, and Jackson was pronounced dead at 2:26. Yes, Jackson was pronounced dead at 2:26 p.m. Pacific time. Murray administered propofol, lorazepam, and midazolam. His death was caused by a propofol overdose. Yeah, a propofol overdose. Yeah, Cat Williams talked about Michael Jackson's drug use on his stand-up comedy show. The news of the death of Michael Jackson, the news of the death of Michael Jackson has spread quickly. It spread quickly online, causing websites to slow down and crash from user overload and putting unprecedented strain on services and websites Google, including names like Google, AOL Instant Messenger, Twitter, and Wikipedia. Overall web traffic rose by between 11% and 20%. MTV and BET aired marathons of Jackson's music videos. They aired marathon. They aired marathon. It's what they're doing. Both networks like MTV and BET. It's BET. It's BET. Those networks are airing marathons of Michael Jackson's music videos that was from the 1970s and all the way to the 1990s and all that. You know, the 2000s. And Jackson specials aired on television stations around the world. MTV briefly returned to its original music video format and aired hours of Jackson's music videos with live news specials featuring reactions from MTV personalities and other celebrities. Memorial service of Michael Jackson. His memorial was held on July 7th, 2009 at the Staples Center in Los Angeles, California, preceded by a private family service at Forest Lawn Memorial Park's Hall of Liberty. Over 1.6 million fans applied for tickets to the memorial, the 87 the 8,750 recipients were drawn at random, and each received two tickets. The memorial service was one of the most watched events in streaming history, with an estimated U.S. audience of 31.1 million, and a worldwide audience of an estimated 2.5 to 3 billion. And I guess who came to the funeral? See, let me go find out who. Well, get the names. Let me get all the names. Mariah Carey, Stevie Wonder, Lionel Richie, Jennifer Hudson, and Shaheen Jafargali performed at the memorial, and Smokey Robinson, William Smokey Robinson Jr., and Dana Owens, also known as Queen Latifah, gave eulogies. Al Sharpton received. Let me go get the name. Let me push the name. Al Sharpton, born Alfred Charles Sharpton Jr. That's what his name is. His real name is Alfred Charles Sharpton Jr. He received a standing ovation, with cheers when he told Jackson's children. Those, I think that was Prince. That was like Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson's kids. I feel it was Blanket, and I feel it was Prince and Blanket in Paris. He told them. He told Prince, Paris, and Blanket, the children of Michael Jackson, that was nothing strange about your daddy. It was strange what your daddy had to deal with, but he dealt with it anyway. Jackson's 11-year-old daughter, Paris Catherine. Let me check the name. Michael Jackson's then 11-year-old daughter, Paris Michael Catherine Jackson. You see her picture. You know, she all grown up now. She had all the tattoos all over her arms and things. She's a sweet girl, but she's not a little girl anymore. She's like grown now. She's a grown ass woman. Shit. But she's speaking publicly for the first time, wept as she addressed the crowd. Lucius Smith, I'll tell you about the name. Lucius Smith provided a closing prayer. On September 3rd, 2009, the body of Jackson was entombed at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. We gotta go to this criminal investigation and the prosecution of Conrad Murray here. In August of 2009, LA County coroner ruled that Jackson's death was a homicide. Law enforcement officials charged Murray with involuntary manslaughter on February 8th, 2010. In late 2011, he was found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and held without bail to await sentencing. Murray was sentenced to 4 years in prison. At the 2009 American Music Awards, Jackson won 4 posthumous awards, including 2 of his compilation album number ones, bringing his total American Music Awards for like 20 to like 26. In the year after his death, more than 16.1 million copies to Jackson's albums were sold in the US alone, and 35 million copies were sold worldwide, more than any other artist in 2009. He became the first artist to sell 1 million music downloads in a week with 2.6 million song downloads. Thriller number ones, yeah, Thriller number ones, and the essential Michael Jackson, yeah, the essential Michael Jackson album became the first catalog albums to outsell any new album. Jackson also became the first artist to have four of the top 20 best-selling albums in a single year in US, following the surge in sales. In March 2010, Sony Music signed a $250 million deal. It's equivalent to $340 million in 2022 with the Jackson estate to extend their distribution rights to Jackson's back catalog until at least 2017. It had been due to expire in 2015. It was the most expensive music contract for a single artist in history. They agreed to release 10 albums. They agreed to release 10 albums. Like, holding my fingers, I'm holding 10 of them. YouTube viewers. Yes, I know why. I know why. Let me see. Let's see. Yeah, they agreed. They agreed to release 10 albums of previously unreleased material and new collections of the released work. The released work that was already been done. The deal was extended in 2017 that July. A Los Angeles court awarded Quincy Jones Jr. $9.4 million of disrupted royalty payments for the Off the Wall album and Thriller and Bad. That was for Off the Wall, Thriller, and Bad. In July 2018, Sony ATV bought the estate's stake in EMI. That was a record company that Vanilla Ice used to work for 287.5 million dollars in 2014. Yeah, Jackson became the first artist to have a top 10 single in the Billboard Hot 100 in 5 different decades. 5 different decades. The following year, Thriller became the first album to be certified for 30 million shipments by the Recording Industry Association of America. A year later, it was certified like 33 times platinum after SoundScan added streams and audio downloads to album certifications. The first posthumous Jackson song, "This Is It," co-written in the 1980s with Paul Anka, was released in October 2009. In October 2009, it was released. The surviving Jackson brothers reunited to record backing vocals. It was followed by a documentary film about the rehearsals for the canceled "This Is It" tour, Michael Jackson's "This Is It," and a compilation album despite a limited 2 week engagement. The film became the highest grossing documentary or concert film ever, with the earnings of more than $260 million worldwide. Jackson's estate had received 90% of the profits. 90% of the profits. In late 2010, Sony released the first posthumous album, Michael, and the promotional single, "Breaking News." The Jackson collaborator, will.i.am, expressed disgust, saying that Jackson would not have approved the release. The video game developer Ubisoft released a music game featuring Jackson for the 2010 holiday season, Michael Jackson: The Experience. It was among the first games to use Kinect and PlayStation Move. The motion detecting camera systems for the Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 in April 2011, Mohammed Al Fayed, the chairman of the Fulham Football Club, unveiled a statue of Jackson outside the club stadium, Craven Cottage. It was moved to the National Football Museum in Manchester in May of 2014 and removed from display in March 2019 following renewed sexual assault allegations. But it's following renewed uh, sexual assault allegations. In October 2011, the theater company Cirque du Soleil launched the Michael Jackson The Immortal World Tour, a $57 million production in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. It was in Montreal, I think, with a permanent show resident in Las Vegas. A larger and more theatrical Cirque show, Michael Jackson 1, designed for residency at the Mandalay Bay Resort in Las Vegas, opened in May 23rd, 2013, in a renovated theater. In 2012, in an attempt to end a family dispute, Jackson's brother Jermaine retracted his signature on a public letter criticizing executors of his brother's estate and his mother's advisors over the legitimacy of his brother's will. TJ Tito Jackson's son was given co-guardianship of Michael Jackson's children. Therefore, Paris, Prince, and Blanket. Even though TJ is cousins with Michael Jackson's children. Okay? I know, man. Hannibal, I'm reading the story of Michael Jackson. Lay off of me. Shit. Fucking idiot. Yeah. TJ Jackson, the son of Tito Jackson, was given co-guardianship of Michael Jackson's children. If it was Michael Jackson III, whoever, Michael Jackson Jr. and Paris Jackson. So after the false reports of Catherine Jackson going missing, Escape an album of unreleased material was released on May 13th, 2014. The lead single, a duet between Jackson and Justin Timberlake, Love Never Felt So Good, reached number 9 on the US Billboard Hot 100, making Jackson the first artist to have a top 10 single on the chart. Top 10 single on the chart in 5 different decades. Later in 2014, Queen released a duet recorded with Jackson in the 1980s compilation album Scream, was released on September 29, 2017. A jukebox musical, MJ the Musical, premiered on Broadway in last year. Miles Frost won the 2022 Tony Award for Best Actor in a Musical for his portrayal of Jackson. On November 18th, 2022, a 40th anniversary edition reissue of Thriller was released. A biographical was it a biographical film uh, based on Jackson's life. Michael is due to enter production through Lionsgate in like this year. It will be directed by Antoine Fuqua, produced by Graham King, and written by John Logan. Jackson will be played by Jafar Jackson, a son of Jackson's brother Jermaine. Deadline Hollywood reported that the film will not shy away from the controversies of Jackson's life. Posthumous shit here, child sexual abuse allegations. In 2013, choreographer Wade Robson filed a lawsuit alleging that Jackson had sexually abused him for 7 years, beginning when he was 7 years old. In 2014, a case was filed by James Sapechuk, alleging sexual abuse over a 4-year period from the age of 10. Both had testified in Jackson's defense. During the 1993 allegations, Robson did so again in 2005. In 2015, Robson's case against Jackson's estate was dismissed, as it had been filed too late. Sapechuk's claim, yeah, let me tell you about this. Sapechuk's claim was also time barred. Yeah. In 2017, it was ruled that Jackson's corporations could not be held accountable for his alleged past actions. The rulings were appealed on October 20th, 2020. Sapechuk's lawsuit against Jackson's corporations was again dismissed. The judge ruled that there was no evidence that Sapechuk had a relationship with Jackson's corporation, nor was it proven that there was a special relationship between the two. On April 26, 2021, Robson's case was, dismissed because of a lack of supporting evidence that the defendants exercised control over Jackson. Robson and Sapechuk described their allegations against Jackson in a graphic detail in a documentary, Leaving Neverland, released in March 2019. Radio stations in New Zealand, Canada, the UK, and the Netherlands removed Jackson's music from their playlist. Jackson's family condemned the film as a public lynching. A public lynching. That's what they call it. A quote unquote public lynching. And the Jackson estate released a statement calling the film a tabloid character assassination. Jackson endured in life, and now in death, close associates of Jackson such as Corey Feldman. That's Corey Feldman. I can't find his name. Corey Feldman, Aaron Carter, and Brett Barnes and Macaulay Culkin said that Jackson had not molested them. They all said that Jackson had not molested them. The documentaries such as Square One, Michael Jackson, Neverland, Firsthand, investigating the Michael Jackson documentary, and Michael Jackson Chased the Truth, presented information countering the claims suggested by Leaving Neverland. Jackson's album sales increased by it increased. See, let me tell you about Michael Jackson. His album sales increased following the documentary screenings. Billboard senior editor Gail Mitchell said that she and a colleague interviewed about 30 music executives who had believed Jackson's legacy could have withstand the controversy. In late 2019, some New Zealand and Canadian radio stations re-added Jackson's music to their playlists, citing positive listener survey results. On February 21st, 2019, the Jackson estate sued HBO for breaching a non-disparagement clause from a 1992 contract. The suit sought to compel HBO to participate in a non-confidential arbitration that could result in $100 million or more in damages awarded to the estate. HBO said they did not breach a contract, filed an anti-SLAPP motion against the estate in September of that year. Judge George H. Wu denied HBO's motion to dismiss the case, allowing Jackson estate to arbitrate. HBO appealed, but in December 2020, the appeals court affirmed Wu's ruling. They affirmed the ruling of Judge Wu. So, yep. Let me explain this to y'all. That's too fucking big. I don't want to go. This shit is too fucking big. Look. It's too fucking big. Oh man, it's too big. It's too big. Looks like I gotta go overtime now. Man, I don't have a choice but to go overtime. Shit. Looks like I'm gonna have to go overtime with this shit. Jackson has referred. Let me say this. Jackson has been referred to as the king of pop. Yeah, that's what we read this. Jackson has been referred to as the king of pop for having transformed the art of the music videos and paving the way for modern pop music for much of Jackson's career. He had an unparalleled worldwide influence over the younger generation. His influence extended beyond the music industry. He impacted dance, led fashion trends, and raised awareness for global affairs. Jackson's music and videos fostered racial diversity in MTV's roster and steered its focus from rock to pop music and R&B, shaping the channel into a form that proved enduring. In songs such as Man the Mirror, Black or White, Heal the World, Earth Song, they don't care about us. And they don't care about us. Jackson's music emphasized racial integration and environmentalism and protested injustice. He is recognized as the most successful entertainer of all time by Guinness World Records. Jackson has also appeared on Rolling Stone's lists of the greatest singers of all time. He is considered one of the most significant cultural icons of the 20th century. His contributions to music, dance, and fashion, along with his publicized personal life, made him a global figure in popular culture for over 4 decades. Trying to trace Michael Jackson's influence. It came from J. Edward Keyes from the Rolling Stone magazine. Trying to trace Michael Jackson's influence on the pop stars that followed him. It's like trying to trace the influence of oxygen and gravity. So vast, far-reaching, and was his impact, particularly the wake of Thriller, colossal and heretofore unmatched commercial success. That there were that there weren't a whole lot of artists who weren't trying to mimic some of the Jackson formula. Danielle Smith, it's Danielle Smith, who was an American magazine editor for chief and the CCO of Vibe Media Group, an editor in chief of Vibe. She described Jackson as the greatest star. Steve Huey of All Music called him an unstoppable juggernaut. That's what we call him, an unstoppable juggernaut possessed of all of his skills to dominate. The charts, yeah, the charts. Seemingly at will and instantly under was it? An instantly un oh yeah, an instantly identifiable voice. Eye-popping dance moves, stunning musical versatility, and loads of sheer star power. BET said Jackson was quite simply the greatest entertainer of all time, whose sound style, movement, and legacy continues to inspire artists of all genres. In 1984, Time pop critic Jake Cox wrote that Jackson is the biggest thing since the Beatles. He is the hottest single phenomenon since Elvis Presley. He just may be the popular black singer ever. He described Jackson as a star of records, radio, rock, video, a one-man rescue team for the music business, a songwriter who sets the beat for a decade, the dancer with the fanciest feet on the street, a singer who cuts across all boundaries of taste and style and color too. In 2003, the Daily Telegraph writer Tom Utley describing Jackson as extremely important and a genius. At Jackson's memorial service on July 7, 2009, Motown founder Berry Gordy called Jackson the greatest entertainer that ever lived. In a June 28, 2009 Baltimore Sun article, Joe Rosen wrote that Jackson's legacy influenced fields including sound, dance, fashion, music, videos, and celebrity. A pop critic who goes by the name of Robert Christgau wrote that Jackson's work from the 1970s to the early 1990s showed immense originality, adaptability, with ambition, with ambition, with genius beats, hooks, arrangements, and vocals, though not lyrics, music that will stand forever. As a reproach to the puritanical notion that pop music is slick and or shallow, and that's the end of it. During the 1990s, as Jackson lost control of his troubling life, his music suffered and began to shape an arc not merely of promise fulfilled and outlived, but something approaching tragedy. A phenomenally ebullient, ebullient child star, yeah, that's word, ebullient child star tops himself like none before, only to transmute audibly into a lost weirdo. In the 2000s, Christgau wrote Jackson's obsession with fame, his grotesque life magnified by his grotesque wealth, or such an offense to rock a status that the fact that he's a great musician is now often forgotten. It's big here. Philanthropy and humanitarian, this big one here. Jackson is regarded a prolific philanthropist. Yeah, that's what Jackson is. Michael Jackson is regarded as a prolific philanthropist and humanitarian. Jackson's early charitable work has been described by the Chronicle of Philanthropy as having paved the way for the current surge of celebrity philanthropy. By the LA Times, well, that's how Chuck Phillips was fired from the LA Times because he made that bogus story. And by the LA Times as having set the standard for the generosity for other entertainers. By some estimates, he donated over $500 million, not accounting for the inflation, to various charities over the course of his life. The total monetary value of Jackson's donations may be substantially higher than Jackson often gave anonymously and without fanfare. In addition to supporting several charities established by others. In 1992, Jackson established his Heal the World Foundation, to which he donated several $1 million in revenue from his dangerous world tour. Jackson's philanthropic activities went beyond just monetary donations. He also performed at benefit concerts, some of which he arranged. He That means something. He gifted tickets for his regular concert performances to groups that assist underprivileged children. Underprivileged children. He visited sick children in hospitals around the world. He opened his own home for visits by underprivileged or sick children and provided special facilities and nurses if the children needed that level of care. Jackson donated valuable personal and professional paraphernalia for numerous charity auctions. He received various awards and accolades for his philanthropic work, including two bestowed by presidents of the United States. The vast breadth of Jackson's philanthropic work has earned the recognition in the Guinness World Records. That's why I'm going to close this son of a bitch. Yep, golden artistry. Jackson was influenced by musicians including James Brown, Little Richard, Jackie Wilson, Diana Ross, Fred Astaire, Sammy Davis Jr., Gene Kelly, and David Ruffin. Little Richard had a substantial influence on Jackson, but Brown was his greatest inspiration. He later said that as a small child, his mother would wake him whenever Brown appeared on television. Jackson described being mesmerized. Jackson's vocal Jackson's vocal technique was influenced by Diana Ross. His use of the ooh interjection from a young age was something Ross had used on many of her songs with the Supremes. There's the Supremes right there. She was a mother figure. She was a mother figure to him, and he often watched her rehearse. He said he had learned a lot from watching how she moved and sang, and that she had encouraged him to have confidence in himself. Choreographer David Winters, who met Jackson while choreographing, choreographing in the 1971 Diana Ross TV special, it's called Diana, said that Jackson watched the musical West Side Story almost every week, and It was his favorite film. He had paid tribute to it in Beat It and Bad video. The vocal style here, Jackson sang from childhood. Jackson sang from childhood, and over time his vocal style changed between 1971 and 1975. His voice descended from boy soprano to lyric tenor. He was known for his vocal range. With the arrival of Off the Wall in the late 1970s, Jackson's abilities as a vocalist were well regarded. Rolling Stone compared his vocals to the breathless, dreamy stutter of Stevie Wonder, and wrote that Jackson's feathery, timbered tenor is extraordinarily beautiful. It slides smoothly into a startling falsetto that used very daringly. By the time of 1982 Thriller, Rolling Stone wrote that Jackson was singing in a fully adult voice that was tinged by sadness. The turn of the 1990s saw the release of the introspective album Dangerous. The New York Times had noted that on some tracks he gulps for breath, his voice quivers with anxiety or drops to a desperate whisper hissing through clenched teeth. And he had a wretched tone when singing of brotherhood or self-esteem. The musician would return to smooth vocals of Invincible. Rolling Stone wrote that at 43, Jackson still performed exquisitely voice rhythm tracks and vibrating vocal harmonies. Joseph Bogle notes that Jackson's ability to use nonverbal sounds to express emotions. Neil McCormick wrote that Jackson's unorthodox singing style was originally and utter distinctive. Jackson had no formal music training. That's what happened with Michael Jackson. This man has no formal music training and could not read or write music notation. He is credited for playing guitar, keyboard, and drums, but was not proficient in them. When composing, he recorded ideas by beatboxing and imitating instruments vocally. Describing the process, he said, "I'll just sing the bass part into the tape recorder. I'll take that bass lick and put the chords of the over the bass lick, and that's what inspires the melody." The engineer Robert Hoffman recalled that after Jackson came in with a song he had written overnight, Jackson sang Jackson sang every note of every chord to a guitar player. Hoffman also remembered Jackson singing string arrangements part by part into a cassette recorder. Jackson danced from a young age, part of the Jackson 5, and incorporated dance extensively in his performances and music videos. According to Sanjoy Roy of The Guardian, Jackson would flick and retract his limbs like switchblades or snap out of a tornado spin and perfectly poised toe stand. The moonwalk taught to him by Jeffrey Daniel. It's Jeffrey Daniel again, was Jackson's signature dance move and one of the most famous of the 20th century. Jackson was credited for coining the name moonwalk. That's for coining the name moonwalk. Uh, the move was previously known as the backslide. His other moves included the robot crotch grab and the anti-gravity lean up the smooth criminal. Jackson explored music. See, Jackson explored genres including pop, soul, rhythm and blues, funk, rock, disco, post-disco, dance pop, and new jack swing. Steve Huey of AllMusic wrote that Thriller refined the strengths of Off the Wall. The strengths of Off the Wall, the dance and rock tracks were more aggressive, while the pop tunes and the ballads were softer and soulful and more soulful. Its tracks included the ballads like The Lady in My Life, Human Nature, The Girl's Mind, the funk pieces like Billie Jean and Wanna Be Starting Something. The disco set of Baby Be Mine and PYT, Pretty Young Thing. Yeah, that's what it says, Pretty Young Thing. Uh, with Off the Wall, Jackson's vocabulary of grunts, squeals, hiccups, moans, and asides vividly showed his maturation into an adult. Robert Christgau wrote in Christgau's record guide Rock Albums of the 70s. The album's track, title track, the album's title track was suggested to the critic a parallel between Jackson and Stevie Wonder's oddball music personas. Since childhood, his main contact with the real world has been on stage and in bed. With Thriller, Christopher Connolly of Rolling Stone commented that Jackson developed his long association with the subliminal theme of paranoia and darker imagery. AllMusic's Stephen Thomas Erlewine noted this on the songs Billie Jean and Wanna Be Starting Something. Billie Jean, Jackson depicts an obsessive fan who alleges he has fathered her child. And and in Wanna Be Starting Something, he argues against gossip and the media. Beat It is describing, gang violence and a homage to West Side Story movie. And it was Jackson's first successful rock crossover piece, according to Huey. He observed that Thriller began Jackson's interest with the theme of supernatural, a topic he revisited in subsequent years. In 1985, Jackson co-wrote the charity anthem "We Are the World." Humanitarian themes later became a recurrent theme in his lyrics and public persona. In Bad, Jackson's concept of the predatory lover is seen on the rock song "Dirty Diana." The lead single "I Just Can't Stop Loving You" is a traditional love ballad, and "Man in the Mirror" is a ballad of confession and resolution. Smooth Criminal is an evocation of bloody assault, rape, and likely murder. AllMusic's Stephen Thomas Erlewine states that Dangerous presents Jackson as a paradoxical person. The first half of the record is dedicated to the New Jack Swing, including songs like Jam, Remember the Time. It was the first Jackson album. It was the first Jackson album in which socially ills became a primary theme. Why you want to trip on me? For example, protests world hunger, AIDS, homelessness, and drugs. Dangerous contains it contains like sexually charged songs like such as In the Closet. The title track continues the theme of the predatory lover and compulsive desire. The second half includes introspective pop gospel anthems such as Will You Be There, Heal the World, and Keep the Faith. In the ballad Gone Too Soon, Jackson gives tribute to Ryan White and the plight of those with AIDS. History creates an atmosphere of paranoia. In the New Jack swing funk rock tracks scream and tabloid junkie. And the R&B ballad You Are Not Alone, Jackson retaliates against the injustice and the isolation he feels and directs his anger at the media. In introspective ballad Stranger in Moscow, Jackson laments his fall from grace, Earth Song, Childhood, Little Susie, and Smile, or operatic pop songs. In DS, Jackson attacks lawyer Thomas W. Snedden Jr., who had prosecuted him in both sexual abuse cases. He describes Snedden as a white supremacist who wanted to get my ass, dead or alive. Invincible includes urban soul tracks such as Cry and The Lost Children, ballads such as Speechless, Break Up Dawn, and Butterflies, and mixes hip hop and R&B in 2000 watts, Heartbreaker. Here's videos and choreography here. Jackson released Thriller, a 14-minute music video directed by John Landis in 1983. The zombie-themed video defined music videos and broke the racial barriers on MTV, which had launched 2 years earlier. Before Thriller, Jackson struggled to receive coverage on MTV allegedly because he was African American. Pressure from CBS Records persuaded MTV to start showing Billie Jean and later Beat It, which led to a lengthy partnership with Jackson and helped other black music artists gain recognition. The popularity of his videos on MTV helped the relatively new channel's viewing figures. And MTV's focus shifted toward pop and R&B music. His performance on Motown 25 Yesterday, Today, Forever changed the scope of live stage shows, making it acceptable for artists to lip sync to music video on stage. The choreography in Thriller has been copied in Indian films and prisons in the Philippines. Thriller marked an increase in scale for music videos and was named the most successful music video ever by the Guinness World Records here. Bad's 19-minute video directed by this it's directed by Martin Scorsese, who was a Italian, was like a film director. Jackson used sexual imagery and choreography and touched his chest, torso, and crotch. When asked by Winfrey in a 1993 interview about why he grabbed his crotch, he said it was spontaneously compelled by the music. Time magazine described the Bad video as infamous. It featured Wesley Snipes. Jackson's later videos featured famous cameo roles. For the Smooth Criminal video. Jackson experimented with leaning toward that's what it is, with leaning forward at a 45-degree angle beyond the performer's center of gravity. To accomplish this live, Jackson and the designers developed a special shoe to lock the performer's feet on stage, allowing them to lean forward. They were granted U.S. patent 5,255,452 for the device. The video for "Leave Me Alone" was not officially released in the U.S., but in 1989 was nominated for 3 Billboard Music Video Awards, and all that, and won a Golden Lion Award for its special effects, and it won a Grammy for the Best Music Video Short Form. But he received the Vanguard Award, MTV Video Vanguard uh, Award in 1988, and in 2001 the award was renamed in his honor. The black and white video simultaneously premiered on November 14th, 1991, in 27 countries, with an estimated audience of 500 million people, the largest audience for a music video at the time. Along with Jackson, it featured Macaulay Culkin, Quincy Jones's uh, wife, I think. I feel it's Quincy Jones's wife, Peggy Lipton, and George Wendt from the television sitcom Cheers. It helped introduce morphing into music videos. It was controversial for the scenes in which Jackson rubs his crotch, vandalizes cars, and throws a garbage can through a storefront. He apologized and removed the final scene of the video. In the Closet featuring Naomi Campbell in a courtship dance with Jackson. Remember the Time was set in ancient Egypt. Featured Eddie Murphy, Iman, and Urban Magic Johnson. The video for Scream was directed by Mark Romanek and production designer Tom Foden. Gained a record 11 MTV Video Music Award nominations and won the Best Dance Video, Best Choreography, and Best Art Direction. The song and its video are Jackson's response to being accused of child molestation in 1993. A year later, it won a Grammy for the Best Music Video Short Form. It has reported as the most expensive music video ever made at $7 million. Romanek has contacted this the Earth Song video was nominated for the 1997 Grammy for the Best Music Video Short Form. Michael Jackson's Ghosts, a short film written by Jackson and Stephen King, and directed by Stan Winston. Stan Winston premiered at the 1996 Cannes Film Festival. At over 38 minutes long, it held the Guinness World Record for the longest music video until 2013, when it was eclipsed by the video for the Pharrell Williams song "Happy." The 2001 video "You Rock My World" lasts over 13 minutes. Was directed by Paul Hunter. Chris Tucker, and Marlon Brando. It won a NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Music Video in 2002. In December 2009, the Library of Congress selected Thriller as the only music video to be preserved in the National Film Registry as a work of enduring importance to American culture. Huey wrote that Jackson transformed the music video into an art form and a promotional tool through complex storylines, dance routines, special effects, and the famous cameos while breaking down racial barriers. Okay, we're going to let's go for this one. This might be the closest son of a bitch to fuck. There's more I can close. Honors and awards. Jackson is one of the best-selling music artists in history, with sales estimated by various sources up to 400 million, 1 billion. He had 13 number one singles in the United States, especially in the US. His solo career more than any other male artist in the Hot 100 era. He was invited and honored by a president of the United States at the White House three times in 1984. He was honored with a presidential public safety commendation award by Ronald Reagan. His humanitarian endeavors in 1990, he was honored as the artist of the decade by uh, George Herbert Walker Bush. In 1992, he was honored as a Point of Light ambassador by Bush for inviting disadvantaged children to his Neverland Ranch. Jackson won hundreds of awards, making him one of the most awarded artists in popular music. His awards included 39 Guinness World Records, including the most successful entertainer of all time, 13 Grammy Awards, as well as the Grammy Legend Award and the Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, and 26 American Music Awards, including the Artist of the Century and Artist of the 1980s. He also received the World Music Awards Best Selling Pop Male Artist of the Millennium and the Bambi Pop Artist of the Millennium Award. Jackson was inducted onto the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 1980 as a member of the Jacksons, and in 1984 as a solo artist. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Vocal Group Hall of Fame as a member of the Jackson 5 in 1997 and 1999, respectively. Again and again, respectively and again. He as a solo artist in 2001 and 2002. It was added to the Songwriters Hall of Fame in 2010. He was the first recording artist to be inducted into the Dance Hall of Fame after his death. And in 2014, he was posthumously inducted into the Rhythm and Blues Music Hall of Fame. In 2021, he was among the inaugural inductees into the Black Music and Entertainment Walk of Fame. In 1988, Fisk University. Fisk University honored him with an honorary doctorate of humane letters. In 1992, he was invested as a titular king of Sangui, titular king of Sangui. I don't know why they got that name in. A traditional kingdom located in the southeast of Ivory Coast. In July 2009, the Lunar Republic Society, the LRS, named a crater on the moon after Jackson. In August, for what would have been Jackson's 51st birthday, Google dedicated their Google Doodle to him. In 2012, the extinct hermit crab Miso Parapac, what is it? What is it? Miso Propyloculus. Yeah, Miso Propyloculus. That's what the hermit crab was named. Michael Jacksony was named in his honor. In 2014, the British Council of Cultural Relations have deemed Jackson's life one of the 80 most important cultural moments of the 20th century. World Vitiligo Day has been celebrated on June 25th, the anniversary of Jackson's death, to raise awareness to the autoimmune disorder that Jackson suffered from. There's earnings. In 1989, Jackson's annual earnings from album sales, endorsements, and concerts were estimated at $125 million. Forbes placed Jackson's annual income at $35 million in 1996 and $20 million in 1997. Estimates of Jackson's net worth during his life range from negative $285 million to a positive $350 million. That'll be a positive $350 million for 2002, 2003, and 2007 alone. Forbes reported in August 2018, that that Jackson's total career pre-tax earnings in life and death were 4.2 billion dollars. Sales of his recordings, Sony's music unit, earned him an estimated $300 million in royalties. He may have earned another $400 million from the concerts, music publishing, including his share of the Beatles catalog, endorsements, merchandising, and music videos. In 2013, the executors of Jackson's estate filed a petition in the United States Tax Court as a result of a dispute with the Internal Revenue Service over U.S. Federal estate taxes. The executors claimed that it was worth about $7 million. The IRS that it was worth over $1.1 billion. In February 2014, the IRS reported that Jackson's estate owed $702 million, $505 million in taxes, and $197 million in penalties. A trial was held from February 6th to the 24th of 2017. In 2021, the tax court issued a ruling in favor of the estate, ruling that the estate's total combined value of the estate was $11.5 million. Now, I forgot. It was $111.5 million. Excuse me. And that the value of Jackson's name and likeness was $4 million, not the $61 million estimated by the IRS outside expert witness. In 2016, Forbes estimated annual gross earnings by the Jackson estate at $825 million, the largest ever recorded for a celebrity, mostly due to the sale of the Sony ATV catalog in 2018. The figure was $400 million. It was the 8th year since his death that his annual earnings were reported to be over $100 million, thus bringing Jackson's post-mortem total to $2.4 billion. Forbes has consistently recognized Jackson as one of the top earning dead celebrities since his death, and placed him at the top spot from 2013 to 2020. Yeah, it's all his discography here. There's his filmography, tours, all that shit. Yeah, it almost about to be turned to 3 hours now. Yeah, about to be turned to 3 hours now. Look, see that? See, I just made a killing off this off of this document. It's a little live show that I had to do. Um, yeah, yeah, but ready to get out of here, man. Ready to ride out of here, man. That's one thing I told y'all. I'm gonna see y'all on like I'm gonna go get out of here, man. Yeah, I'm gonna be finished anyway. Rest in peace to Michael Joseph Jackson. August 29th, 1958. June 25th, 2009. I'm about to be finished with this thing here. I'll be back in the studio on September 7th for the legacy of Eric Easy E Wright. See y'all in September, man. I'm out of here.